In this episode, we're going to give you the who, what, and whys of Cristalino Tequila. Right here on the Tequila Hombre. Coming up next. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Tequila Hombre, where today we're going to give you the who, what, and whys of Cristalino Tequila. I know you've probably seen them on the shelves, maybe not known what they are or what they're all about. But this video is going to give you the information you need so you can make an educated decision as to whether it's tequila you want to buy or not. So let's get into it. All right, first we're going to get into the who on who is making these Cristalinos. Most notably, and you've probably seen it on the shelf in every store you go into when you're looking for tequila, is Don Julio. They have the Don Julio 70th anniversary Cristalino that they made. You also probably have seen Maestro Doble with their Diamante. There's also 1800 Tequila has their Cristalino. You can also find a new one that's been advertised heavily on Facebook, and you can see start showing up in the stores, which is Key. They call theirs a Platinum Añejo, as well as Volcan de mi Tierra has a Cristalino, and Hornitos has one as well that you'll see on the shelves. You'll also see one from Tierra Noble, which theirs is out. And there's many other producers that are coming out with these and more every day. And they're not Blancos, but let me get into what exactly they are in the what portion of this episode. All right, so now for the what. What is a Cristalino? So I told you Terra Noble, which I have their Añejo right here, makes a Cristalino. So what a Cristalino is they take a perfectly good Añejo like this. Well, it may not be perfectly good, but they take an Añejo like this, and they run it through carbon, activated carbon, which this is a glass here of activated carbon. So you can see what it looks like. They're little pellets, and in the case for tequila, they grind it up and use a powder, and they filter the perfectly good Añejo through activated carbon to try to remove the color. All right, so we're going to get into a little of the science behind using activated carbon and filtering and how it works here to give you a better understanding of what exactly is happening to the tequila when they carbon filter it. All right, to understand charcoal filtering, let's talk a little bit about the charcoal aspect of the filtering, which is known as activated carbon. Now, with charcoal carbon filtering, the item used is either known as activated carbon or activated charcoal. Now, what happens is this carbon is activated to create tiny pores inside of the carbon that opens up these passages for the spirit to pass through. And these pores are what either absorb the particles that are going through it, trapping them, keeping them from passing through the filter media, or they will chemically react with it. Now, to activate the carbon, what they do is they start with basically like wood, sawdust, peach pits, they use petroleum pitch, coconut shells, and they carbonize them. And after they carbonize them, they then need to activate the carbon. To activate the carbon, they will either use hot gas activation, thermal activation, or they use chemical activation. Now, with thermal activation, they typically use steam, and they take the carbon and they inject steam into it, and it opens up tiny pores inside the charcoal, activating it. Or they'll use, in chemical activations, they use salt or they use acid to open up the pores, creating a greater surface area within this charcoal. And then what happens is they'll take this charcoal and they grind it up into a dust. But even though it's a dust and tiny particles, it still has lots of tiny pores inside of it that can trap particles from the liquid passing through it. So then they take this powdered charcoal and they pour it into the tequila, into the distillate, if they're doing it for a different spirit, and then they pass it through a filter. And as it goes through the filter media, and they use different filter medias for this, it traps the charcoal, and the charcoal forms a bed along the filter media. And then when it forms this bed, the distillate, the tequila, passes through it, and it'll trap particles that are within the tequila. So when they do this, not only are they trapping the colored particles, but they're also trapping flavor particles. So not only does it take color out of the tequila, it will also take flavor out. So then how do they fix that? Well, if it takes too much flavor out, they will then use artificial flavoring such as vanilla, caramel, stuff we've talked about before in some of the other videos, and they'll add that to it to bolster the flavor profile of the tequila. If they do it right and they use just the right amount of charcoal and they filter it just the right amount of times, they can remove all of the color, or most of the color, and still leave some flavoring in there. But they still do lose some flavoring. And whether they decide to replace it or not, it's up to them. So what this can do is it can produce a milder tasting tequila. Not only will it be colorless, but it'll also be kind of flat on the flavor profile, where when you're drinking something like an aged tequila, I'm looking for really nice flavor, not only from the agave, which you would lose through the filtering process, but also from the barrel, which you'd also lose through the filtering process. So then you're probably wondering, well, why do they do this? Well, we'll get into that next. All right, so let's talk about why a producer would want to make a tequila like this. Nobody knows. It could be that they had a batch of tequila that they aged and over-oaked it, and they needed to make the oak less subtle, and decided to run it through a carbon filter to see if they could fix it, and it came out tasting less subtle and more palatable, and so they decided to make that and offer it as a product out on the market. It's a marketing ploy. People look at it and see a clear, they call it, things like platinum, and it just gives them another SKU to sell, and they can market it as being a superior tequila when in fact it really isn't. It could be a good tequila for beginners, since it is less flavorful, has less of a bite to it than a real tequila will. Could be a good gateway. But we typically don't recommend it. It's more of a marketing thing, more of a gimmick than anything. So Cristalinos are not superior tequilas compared to a regular añejo. They are different than a Blanco, and they're actually regulated by the CRT as well. There is some rules to making a Cristalino. For example, when they make a Cristalino, they must state how long it's, and be able to prove how long the tequila has been aged for. And they use not only añejos, they use reposados now, extra añejos. They use all kinds of aged spirits in them. And they also must specify what filtering method they use, because they can either use activated carbon to do it. Sometimes they use redistillation, but in redistillation it's more costly for them because they'll lose volume and they'll not be able to create as many bottles out of a batch as they can through just carbon filtering it. So there you go. That's basically, in a nutshell, what carbon filtering is and what Cristalinos are when you see them on the shelf. Does it still sound something appealing to you? Did this enlighten you and give you some more information that you didn't have before about Cristalinos? I'd love to hear your comments below. Also, don't feel free to give us a like for the information we provided, and don't forget to subscribe. We're doing some big giveaways here coming up, and we want to make sure that you're able to participate, and only those that are subscribed to the channel and comment on the videos, and you can see the giveaway details in the G4 Añejo video that we did on how you can make it so you are qualified to for the drawing for the giveaway. So don't forget to subscribe, and like I always say, until the next time, life is too short to drink bad tequila. Salud.